But to look at that and see the beauty in the flower and the color in the flower and wonder why it appeals to me as a person, why it appeals to anybody, the smell of a flower, why is that? Are all those details? Because I know why the flower has those things in a scientific reason, or why science tells us why, to attract the bee, to attract the butterfly, to attract all those insects that come in and do the pollination. And of course, they also feed on the nectar and all that. But why do I care about a flower? Why do I wonder, it's a beautiful flower? So it's something there that's telling me about God, the wonder of the Creator. And He made it beautiful to us because He wants us to experience beauty.
That's the nature photographer Pasquale Mingarelli, whose photos and the devotions he writes in parallel have inspired many. During this podcast, Mingarelli explains how nature invites us to learn about God, how we can mirror our Creator with our own creativity, and how we can slow down to experience moments with God. Of course, he also shares his thoughts on putting faith into practice. I'm Cecil Taylor of Cecil Taylor Ministries, teaching Christians how to live a 7-day practical faith. Everything I do, whether blogs, books, or videos, or this podcast, is about taking our faith from Sunday into the rest of the week, applying scripture and faith to life situations. I'm also interested in children and parents, as I've written a book entitled Unison Parenting, the Comprehensive Guide to Navigating Christian Parenthood with One Voice. You can find more about the book and a special online sale in the podcast notes, as well as much more about my overall ministry and how it can help you. In the Practical Faith Academy podcast, I add other voices with other life experiences to understand how they put faith into practice. Please subscribe to my podcast according to your listening platform's instructions. I welcome your comments and your sharing of this podcast with others. It's unfortunate that in conducting an audio conversation with Pasquale Mingarelli that we can't have a rotating selection of his beautiful photography to show you at the same time, but we will tell you later how to find it. Pasquale, welcome to the Practical Faith Academy podcast.
Thank you, Cecil. I appreciate you having me on. Good to be here.
As we get going, I have this common question I'd love to ask, and we're going to talk about lots of ways to put faith into practice today. But when I say 7-day practical faith, what does that mean to you?
Okay, there's the question, right?
The question.
For me, it's the spiritual disciplines. Having that quiet time with God, that reading the Scripture, praying, making time for those things daily, and not just kind of praying when prayer needs to be prayed, or having that conversation throughout the day with God, but also spending time and with God, making a deliberate time to spend with God. And also it's also the struggle of life, having faith in your life as you go about your life, and you have all that comes at us in the course of a day, or then there's these things that only come along once in a while. Then of course for me, it's when I also get that time to step outside, either with a camera or without a camera, and just be with God and have that conversation with Him during those times.
Yeah, because you talk about connecting to God through nature. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I know I have had great experiences connecting to God through nature, just being in something so much larger than myself and seeing the beauty and diversity and the creativity of God. What led you to take the next step of connecting to God through nature photography?
Since I was a child, I especially as a teenager, I got more and more fascinated with this idea of photography and nature. And, when I began to, what would life look like as an adult, I thought about being a nature photographer, a wildlife photographer. And my life took a different turn, where I went to photojournalism and newspaper. I did work for a newspaper, and then I worked for a Christian magazine, and just So that's kind of where the photography went to. And then I slowly got more back into going outside. I met some friends who like to spend time in the outdoors, and I got spending more time in outdoors than I ever did as a kid. I wanted to, felt like I wanted to celebrate God as creator.
Hmm.
And that even motivated me to spend more time outside. And the more time I was spending outside, the more time I was connecting with God uh, as I was outside. It was leading me into moments with God, time with God, and just special moments with Him within His creation. Um, and I just see photography helps me to study the nature more, to look at it, to appreciate it, to wonder about it and how it's made, and it makes me think about God as I just don't think of nature as something that evolved. Of course, I don't think that. So I think more about the creator of it and why he created it, the way he's created it, and um, when I look at something as simple, what we would think is simple as a flower, and of course, a flower is not simple. Uh, but to look at that and see the beauty in the flower and the color in the flower and wonder why it appeals to me as a person, why it appeals to anybody, the smell of a flower, why is that? Are all those details? Because I know why the flower has those things in a scientific reason, or why science tells us why, to attract the bee, to attract the butterfly, to attract all those insects that come in and do the pollination. And of course, they also they feed on the nectar and all of that. But why do I care about a flower? Why do I wonder that's a beautiful flower? So it's something there that's telling me about God, the wonder of the Creator, and He made it beautiful to us because He wants us to experience beauty. For some reason, He decided He wanted us to love beauty. Not just to go through life on a practical level of a machine going through this, that, but there's this moments of beauty, these times of beauty. And I wanted to capture that beauty. Here it is. It's the creator. When I'm going through the process of photographing his beauty, I'm connecting with him as I go through a creative process. He's the creator. I'm going through a creative process and I'm connecting with him as I do that. Um, and yeah, and I love capturing the essence of what he's made with the camera, whether it's beautiful mountain or it's wildlife, animals, all that. And again, that thoughts of why did he create it that way? Why did he create it with such things? And it just helps me to wonder and to think about the goodness and grandness of God.
There's a lot of things that can lead us to God, right? It doesn't have to be nature. It could be the smile when we help somebody, and all of a sudden we realize, wow, there's something bigger than myself, right? I think sometimes we look for something bigger than ourselves, don't you think? We don't want to think we're just it, and nature helps us with that, right?
Yeah, nature definitely helps us appreciate the grandness of God. It shows us of something greater than ourselves. So much of it. There's a mountain. The mountain is majestic and powerful, but somebody put that mountain there. Somebody more majestic. Somebody more powerful. And I think that's why we sense that spiritual feeling. Like even people who are not believers, they'll sense that spirituality in nature, but because it's pointing to something greater, it's that transcends it, and like we know as Christians that God transcends His creation. He's not part of it. He made it, but He's not part of it. Just like I'm not part of my photographs. I make them, but I'm not part of them. But God transcends it, and it points to a transcendent because something's greater. something's, you know, something's more powerful, something's more majestic, something's more wonderful.
Let me take a quick break from the conversation to tell you more about my ministry. Not only do I provide other free material than podcasts like my various blogs, but I also offer books and video studies that are valuable for your faith growth. I call them instant content products because you can start using them right away, whether it's a book, study guide, or a video lesson for your small group. Please visit CecilTaylorMinistries.com and click on Instant Content Products to learn more, including about my new Advent video study and study guide, The Misfits of Christmas. It is exclusively available at my online store, which you can find from my website. Check the show notes for more information.
Yeah.
Pasquale Mingarelli is my guest here on the Practical Faith Academy, and Pasquale, I've heard all the way through this your desire to create and participate in a creative process that's inspired by God. How do you think we are all called to create? Not everybody's going to be a photographer or my gosh, in my case, I couldn't be an artist, you know. So how are we all called to create?
Um, God is an artist, and actually, the some of the words in the Hebrew and the Genesis chapter one are artistic terms. Like where the term good and very good comes from, words that have an artistic meaning in the Hebrew. And so God is an artist, and He created this world that beauty I like to capture, being made in His image. I believe and that we get that desire to create beauty as our Father does, as our designer does. He's put that in us as part of being stamped with His image. You guys are going to create. I like to create. Nothing in nature creates. Beavers build dams, they build blodgers, birds build nests, but it's the bird, the one bird in one tree doesn't try to outdo the bird in the other tree. It does. I'm going to make my nest more fancy than your nest. No, they're all the same. And biologists could go, oh, that's a robin's nest, that's a cardinal's nest. Because they're all the same. But people, we create differently. And because God's created us to create, and we create out of our own uniqueness and our own design. And some people, that creating is a different level. Some people it's painting. Some people it's photography. Some people they draw. Some people do multiple things, and some people just create music. It's not a visual thing. They create music, and some people create, whatever it is. We all create. We're as you said, you were a newscaster, and you have that background of broadcasting, and that, but you had to come up with a story that you put together that you were going to put on the news, and you created it. Sure, things happened, but you put it all together in a package to present to your audience. And so we all have some area that we're doing creating, because our Father says, I made you to create.
I want to share with the listeners that you provide a visual Bible verse of the day, and I really enjoy it. I would highly recommend it. And you combine this beautiful photo and a Bible verse and a brief devotion in a meaningful way. And how did you start doing that? And what do you hope visitors will take away?
Many years ago, I had this idea for a book, and I thought it was the original name for my book, which kind of evolved and came out as something else, was God's Art, thoughts of a meditation of a wildlife photographer, or something to that effect. And so I thought, I have to start getting interest in my book. So I started doing these photos and Bible verses on Facebook. That's all it was. I'd put it up on Facebook and Bible verse with it. And I thought, maybe I need to make this deeper, make more to it. And I thought I got something going on here. I should put it on a website. So then I went to the website and I started doing it on a website. Still put that on Facebook, but I went to a website, and I thought, But I thought I got to go a little deeper. So then I attached a devotion to it. And then and it's not a very long devotion. Usually it's just a 2 or 3 paragraphs, sometimes even less. And it's just to help people start their day. People get an email and there it is. It's in their email and it's quick and it's meant to just encourage and inspire people in their walk with God, help them to draw near to Him. And then to go deeper, I did create a book that's longer devotions. That website is just real quick for people, and it's at thecreationspeaks.com. And it's real quick for people. And then the book, which is called Drawing Near, Meeting God in His Creation, kind of goes deeper into that stuff. So.
Okay. Well, we'll have the link in the show notes for everybody, so don't worry if you didn't get it written down just now. Just check the show notes. From what I can tell, you have been all over. Your photos are from everywhere. What are some of your favorite places and favorite subjects to photograph?
But my very favorite place is Glacier National Park in Northwest Montana.
Oh, I want to go there. I haven't been there yet. That's on the bucket list.
It's just, there's so much to it in terms of at one time I called it the American Alps. The mountains are just so unique and sculptured by God and by God through glaciers and glaciation, and it's just incredibly rocky. But then there's lakes and forest and just lots of beauty there. And then it's the most abundant. I mean, there's just tons of wildlife that you could get photographs of, such a variety. It actually has the western side of the park is what they consider to be the only complete ecosystem in the United States that goes back before Europeans came to the U.S. So it's because it has all the major plants and animals that were there, and probably the lesser as well. But it's just a beautiful place. Of course, I like to do, landscapes and at various times, like sunsets. So I feel there's a meaning behind a sunrise and a sunset. The sunrise shows us God's faithfulness every day, and to capture that wonder, that beauty of that morning, that the heavens declare the glory of God. Just the glory of the morning, and God's glory is greater, but it's a picture of that faithfulness. Every day I've lived, over 50 years, and every day I've lived, there's always been a sunrise. Never had one without one. Maybe I didn't see it because it was sleeping or it was cloudy or whatever, but there's always been one, and God's always faithful. And then the sunset is the time to settle down. It's just the time to take rest and take peace. The day is done, and we know there'll be a tomorrow. And so sunrises, sunsets, pathways. I love to photograph pathways because a pathway for me is a metaphor for my relationship with God. When I have photographs of pathways, they're usually the way I like to have them lit is in a certain way that kind of calls you down the path. Either that light comes from the side or from the back, and it calls you down the path, and the path looks like it's a place of you want to go down. Don't know what's there, but you want to go down. There's something about it's calling you to beauty and wonder and mystery and just maybe even love. There's something there that's calling you down that pathway, and I want to follow that beauty, that mystery, that wonder, that love. I want to find out where it goes, and I believe that's something in my relationship with God. God's got a pathway I want to walk down. I want to draw near to Him. I want to connect with Him. I want to walk down, but I don't know where it goes completely. I do know, we get to spend eternity with God in heaven, but on a daily level, I don't know where He's taken me. Yeah, so those are some of my favorite things to photograph. And I also like to photograph portraits, people. I just like to especially people in relationship with each other, whether it's a family or a couple, something to capture that, not just maybe an individual portrait, but those kind of things, children in a portrait. And I like to photograph sports, the
Oh, there
struggle,
we go. There we go.
the intensity, the passion.
Yes.
You know, I like to, and that's there in sports, and to photograph that and to catch that action and that people performing at their level, and yeah, and wildlife. Wildlife is, I'm just amazed by how God's created so many different things and the way He's created them, and just to capture their wonder and their beauty and just their mystique.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about my speaking, which I'd love to do. If you like hearing me on these podcasts, I hope you'll like me even more in person. In my speaking portfolio, I offer signature talks based on my books and videos. I also lead retreats and have several proven retreat themes if you're looking for an idea and a speaker. We can also discuss custom topics for your church or group. Please visit ceciltaylorministries.com and click on the speaking option near the top of the page. I am now booking for 2026 and would so much appreciate the opportunity to speak to your church, group, or organization anywhere in the country. Pasquale Mingarelli is my guest here on the Practical Faith Academy, and just from that, you mentioned the idea of the pathway, and that's part of photography. It was part of your tips that I saw that you had given to people, and as far as how do you create an interesting photograph. What's another one or two tips that you might share on taking photos?
Slow down. Um, don't be in a hurry when you go about it. Take your time. If you have something in front of you, don't be thinking about the next photo. Treasure that moment with God and the beauty of His creation. If you're doing nature, you don't have to take 40 pictures. If you slow down and you wind up with 5, and you've done it with those moments with God, they're probably going to be better than the 40 you would have wound up with the other way. So, and let that wonder of that subject speak to you about God. And most of that, I'm speaking of that through nature photography, but you could apply that to other things. That if it's a portrait of people, you know, connect with them in that moment, and you'll get better pictures of them. And just enjoy them as you photograph them, just as you would enjoy nature as you're photographing nature. Uh,
Yeah, I see this as a metaphor for experiencing life, right?
yeah,
You're talking about capturing a moment, but don't we do a lot of racing through and not savoring the moment? And one thing I've written about in one of my books is how the present is, this moment is where we meet the eternal. The eternal is in the present, and we fail to recognize that sometimes. So I really like what you're saying there about the about taking your time and treasuring the moment. That's really meaningful to me. Let me wrap up with a couple of questions that I'd like to ask about faith. What's the hardest part about putting faith into practice?
hardest part about putting faith, maybe trust. Trust in the moment. Uh, Sometimes things could happen to us, and we're wondering how God is in the moment, or guiding us in the moment, or helping us in the moment. So we could come to a point where, you know, I need to trust you, but you know, is that is the is it kind of working out the way I want it to work out, even though I'm trusting you? And I think the bigger trust is to trust God when it isn't working out the way you want it to work out. And but yeah, that trust aspect of living out in faith and trust.
Well, you may have covered this already about what's the best tip for developing and maintaining a 7-day practical faith, but let's hear if you have one.
Make it regular. I guess talked about, you know, time in God's word, prayer. Find a time to do it. Uh, I've always found the morning. Some people find it in the evening. Some people find it when they get home from work. I know people can do that, but for 9 out of 10 people, making time in the morning is probably the best way to go about it. And uh, reading God's word, praying, and life could be fast at us. We're talking about that. And, even if you got 15 minutes, sometimes even 10, hopefully it could be longer. But if you could take that time just to maybe read the Bible for 5 minutes and pray for 5 minutes, and if you could go longer to 15 to 20, or half hour, or, whatever you can do. Some people, if you could go, longer than a half hour, but just putting that daily time and with God and walking with Him.
Very good. Tell our listeners how they can follow you and find your book. And I know you also do some speaking. Just tell us how they can connect.
The best way, my book is called Drawing Near, Meeting God in His Creation. And they can get that on my website, thecreationspeaks.com, or the visualverse.thecreationspeaks.com. It's there, but it's where you can find it wherever you like to buy books online. So that you can find, of course, my website is what I said, but I'm on, social media like Facebook, and I'm also I gotta really start to develop a YouTube channel. So, and on the YouTube channel, I put, some of my Bible verses of the day, I turn them into video. But I also talk about, photography, and give people tips about photography. And I also talk about, connecting with God through photography, the spiritual side of that. And my YouTube is just The Creation Speaks Nature Photography. You'll have to search it, or search my name. People tell me how they search my name, and I come up on all over the place. So if you put Pat Mingarelli or Pasquale Mingarelli, you'll find lots of videos, whether they're mine or somebody else's, because I've been on podcasts and things like that. It's like, yeah, somebody who a young man he's autistic, and I have a relationship with him, a friendship with him, and he's like, man, he calls me Mr. Pat. He says, Mr. Pat, you're all over YouTube. I looked you up.
Well, good. Well, that should make it easier to find you. And really, I appreciate, first of all, what you do for other people, from taking your experience with God, with nature, and then translating it and presenting it in a way that others can experience, even if they haven't been to Glacier National Park yet or whatever, right? So I appreciate what you do. And then also your time today on the podcast. Thanks so much for being with me.
Well, thanks for having me, Cecil. I appreciate the opportunity, and I enjoyed speaking with you.
It was refreshing to have such a different topic on the Practical Faith Academy podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it like I did. This was my 70th podcast. I have had so many fascinating conversations and topics. Please go through my podcast list. I've been doing the Practical Faith Academy format for more than half of those podcasts, and before that, I covered scriptural topics on my podcast, sometimes on my own, sometimes with guests. So please check out the whole set. There is a